The unexpected catch the forest was quiet that night. Okay. Only the sound of the wind moving through the tall trees broke the silence. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the ground. Ethan walked slowly, careful not to make too much noise. He had been out here for days, trying to catch something to eat. Food was hard to find, and his small traps were the only way he could survive. He stopped beside one of his traps, a simple rope snare tied to a bent branch. It was empty. He sighed. The other 2 traps had been empty as well. T's stomach growled, and he rubbed it, wishing for a good meal. He decided to check his last trap, the one near the river. That one had always been his best chance. As he moved closer, he noticed something strange. The air felt different. The wind was colder here, and there was a faint hum in the distance, like a machine running far away. He stopped for a moment, looking around. Then he heard it, a sharp snap. The sound of the trap being triggered. His heart jumped. Finally, he ran toward it, hoping to see a rabbit or maybe a large bird. But when he reached the clearing, he froze. Inside the trap, tangled. In the net was not an animal. It was a girl. She was unlike anyone Ethan had ever seen. Her skin had a faint silver shine, like moonlight on metal. Her eyes were a deep, glowing blue, almost like they were lit from inside. Her hair was long and white, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. She looked young, maybe around his age. But there was something about her face, sharp, delicate, almost too perfect, that told him she wasn't human. She struggled against the net, breathing fast. Her movements were quick, but she was clearly trapped. The rope cut into her arms as she pulled, making her wince in pain. Ethan's mind raced. What is this? Who is she? Where did she come from? Before he could speak, she looked right at him. Her glowing eyes widened, and she said something in a language he didn't understand. The words were fast and sharp, filled with fear. "It's okay," Ethan said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you." She only struggled harder, pulling away as he stepped closer. Her gaze moved from his face to his hands, and then to his mouth. Her breathing grew even faster, and her expression turned from fear to terror. She started shaking her head, whispering in her strange language again and again. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Whatever she thought he was going to do, it wasn't. Good. That's when he noticed the strange metal bands around her wrists. They were smooth, with tiny lights running across the surface. They looked advanced, far beyond anything humans could make. A thin line of symbols glowed faintly on them, symbols he had never seen before. Then he saw something else, a small device hanging from her waist. It was round, dark, and blinking with a faint blue light. The light flashed slowly at first, then faster. She noticed it too. Her eyes grew wide, and she started speaking even faster, her voice rising. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he could understand her tone. Warning. The device began to beep. A slow, steady sound at first, then quicker and quicker. "What is that?" Ethan asked, stepping back. The girl stopped struggling for just a moment. She looked straight at him, her voice trembling, and in perfect English she whispered, "Please, don't eat me." Ethan stared at her, completely stunned. Eat her? Why would she think that? Before he could ask, the beeping sound grew loud enough to echo through the trees. It wasn't just sound now. He could feel a faint vibration under his feet. Something was coming. The girl's eyes darted to the dark forest behind him. She whispered something under her breath, then looked back at him with desperation. Ethan's mind was spinning. He had no idea who she was, where she came from, or why she was here. But one thing was clear: someone or something was looking for her. And if they found her here, in his trap, they might not be happy to see him either. The beeping turned into a high-pitched tone. and in the far distance, a faint red light appeared between the trees. It moved slowly at first, then began to speed up. The girl's breathing turned ragged. She tugged at the net again, her eyes wild with panic. "Please," she said again in English, her voice breaking. "Help me." Ethan didn't know what to do. His hands trembled as he reached for his knife. He hesitated. If he cut her loose, he would be involved in whatever trouble she was in. If he didn't want to think about what might happen to her. The red light grew brighter. And now he could hear something else. Heavy footsteps, not human footsteps. They were too slow, too heavy, and each one made the ground shake just a little. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He looked at the girl. Her eyes locked on his, pleading, without another thought. He crouched down and slid the knife under the ropes. Asterisk, asterisk, the fear in her eyes, the ropes loosened under Ethan's knife. One by one, the knots fell apart until the net began to sag. The girl didn't move, not because she didn't want to, but because her eyes were locked on something beyond Ethan's shoulder. Her glowing blue gaze was fixed. "Enblinking." Ethan hesitated. "What is it?" he whispered, glancing back. Nothing. Just the dark forest. The silver light of the moon on wet leaves. But when he looked at her again, her fear had deepened. It was the kind of fear that went beyond. Danger, the kind of fear you feel when you believe there's no escape. She tried to push herself back, away from him, even though the net still tangled her legs. Ethan didn't understand. He wasn't threatening her. He just freed her arms. Then he saw her eyes shift, not to the forest, not to the light, but to him. To his teeth, it hit him. She wasn't scared of what was out there. She was scared of him. Ethan frowned, his mind racing. "Why? Why are you afraid of me?" Her voice came out in shaky words, still mostly in her own language, but the way she looked at him. It was as if she already knew what he was, or what she thought he was. When the last rope fell away, she scrambled backward on the ground, keeping her eyes on him like he was some kind of predator. Her hands gripped the dirt, her fingers trembling. "I'm not going to hurt you," Ethan said, holding his hands out again. She flinched. Ethan tried to take a slow step toward her, but she immediately pressed her back to a tree, eyes wide. Her breathing was sharp and uneven. Her entire body was shaking. And then, the beeping device on her belt gave a sudden loud chirp. Her head snapped down toward it, and she quickly grabbed it, pressing a sequence of glowing symbols with quick, desperate fingers. The beeping slowed again, but it didn't stop. Ethan could tell it wasn't just some random gadget. It was a tracker, and trackers meant someone or something knew exactly where she was. She glanced at him again, and in broken English, she muttered, "They coming." The way she said it, the way her voice broke on the word coming, sent a cold shiver down Ethan's back. "Who?" he asked. Her hands clenched the device tighter. "Hunters." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. Suddenly, there was a sound deep, mechanical, almost like a growl. It was far away, but getting closer. The air itself seemed to thrum with it. The girl's eyes darted toward the sound. Then she looked back at Ethan, her fear battling something else in her gaze, a decision. She pushed herself off the tree and staggered toward him. Before he could react, she grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so slender. Her eyes bored into his. "If they find me, they kill you too." The words hit him like a stone in the chest. 100 questions flashed in his mind. Who are they? Why would they kill me? Who is she? But there was no time for answers. The forest lit up with a faint red glow. Not moonlight. Not fire. Something artificial. It moved slowly through the trees, scanning side to side like a searchlight. The girl's grip on his arm tightened painfully. "Run," she whispered. Ethan didn't think. He grabbed her wrist and started moving. The two of them pushed through the undergrowth, dodging branches and leaping over roots. The forest seemed darker now, as if the trees themselves were closing. Behind them, the red light grew brighter. The deep growl was louder now, joined by the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps, each one crunching leaves and snapping twigs. Ethan's mind screamed to stop and hide, but the girl pulled him. Onward. She seemed to know where to go. She moved with strange agility, almost gliding between trees despite her fear. The wind whipped past Ethan's ears as he ran. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. Finally, she yanked him down behind a large, fallen tree, its massive trunk lying across the forest floor like a wall. She crouched low. Pressing a finger to her lips, Ethan didn't dare speak. The sound of the footsteps was close now, so close he could feel the vibration in the ground. Then, slowly, a shadow passed over them. It wasn't a human shape. It was tall, impossibly tall, its outline jagged and sharp. The red glow came from a single round eye set in its head, an eye that swept side to side like a scanner. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The thing was right above them, the red eyes. Glow passed over the fallen tree, lingering for a heartbeat, then moving on. The footsteps began again, this time heading toward the river. Only when the sound faded did the girl lower her hand. Ethan exhaled, his body trembling. He turned to look at her. "What are they?" he whispered. She stared at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to tell him. Then, in a low voice, she said, "Hunters. From the black ships. They take my people. They not stop until find me." Ethan swallowed hard. Why? Her gaze didn't waver. Because I escaped. A warning to lay the forest was still, too still. Even the wind seemed to have stopped moving. Ethan stayed crouched behind the fallen tree, his heartbeat thudding so loud he was sure the hunters could hear it. The girl, Lyra, as he would soon learn, kept her head low, her silver hair falling like a curtain around her face. Her glowing blue eyes scanned the shadows, tracking every flicker of movement. Then came the sound again, the low mechanical growl. It was closer now. Ethan gripped the handle of his knife, though he knew it was useless against something that tall and unnatural. His trap rope wouldn't work. His hands were sweating. The red scanning light swept the forest once more, slowly moving from tree to tree. When it touched the fallen trunk, where they hid, Ethan held his breath until his lungs ached. The light paused. A faint worry sound began, like gears shifting inside a machine. Ethan's muscles teensed, and then the light moved on. The shadow above them shifted away, and the sound of the heavy footsteps began again, but this time they weren't fading. They were circling. Lyra's grip on Ethan's arm tightened like a vice. She leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "They know," she breathed. Ethan's mind raced. "Know what?" "That you helped me." He almost laughed, a short, nervous sound, but stopped when he saw her expression. She wasn't exaggerating. The fear in her eyes was sharp, like broken glass. Before he could reply, a loud click echoed through the forest. It came from somewhere above. Ethan looked up and froze. Through the branches, maybe 30 feet away, a drone hovered in midair. It was small, no bigger than a hawk, but its shape was all angles and edges, like a black insect forged from metal. Its single red lens glowed brighter than the others he'd seen. It made a sound like a sharp, skidge intake of breath, then emitted a piercing whistle that cut through the night. The hunters had found them. Lyra reacted instantly. She yanked Ethan by the wrist, pulling him to his feet. "Run," she hissed. They bolted from the fallen tree, crashing through undergrowth. The forest exploded with noise, the drone zipped after them, branches snapping behind it. Somewhere farther back, the heavy footsteps turned into a sprint, shaking the ground. Ethan's lungs burned. His legs screamed for rest, but the pounding behind them drove him faster. The red light from the drone flickered across the trees, always just a few feet behind. Lyra led the way, weaving between rocks and ducking under low branches. She seemed to know where she was going. "Where are we going?" Ethan gasped. "Safe place," she said, though her voice was thin, almost hopeless. The drone let out another whistle, and suddenly the forest ahead of them lit up with two more red beams. More drones. "They're everywhere," Ethan muttered, panic crawling up his spine. Lyra stopped so suddenly that Ethan nearly ran into her. She grabbed the strange device from her belt, the tracker, and smashed it against a rock. Sparks flew as it broke into pieces. "Will that stop them?" Ethan asked, chest heaving. She shook her head. "No, only slow." The heavy footsteps were close now, too close. The ground shook with each one. Ethan's instinct screamed at him to run again. But Lyra grabbed his face, forcing him to look into her glowing eyes. "If they catch me," she said slowly, clearly, "you run. You not try to save me. You hide." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but she pressed her hand over it. Her eyes softened just a little. "You helped me already. That is enough." Then, before he could respond, a tree trunk to their left exploded. Wood shards flew in every direction, and a massive black shape stepped through the smoke. It was a hunter. Its body was built like a nightmare. Long arms ending in clawed hands. A head with no mouth, just a single red eye glowing in the center. The rest of its body was covered in black plates, moving and shifting like living armor. It turned its head slowly, scanning them. The red beam slid over Ethan's face, then locked onto Lyra. She stiffened. Her grip on Ethan's wrist turned. Painful, the hunter took a single step forward, and its claws flexed with a sharp snap. Ethan's knife felt like a child's toy in his hand. He knew it wouldn't matter. Then, without warning, Lyra pushed him hard. Ethan stumbled backward, falling to the ground. "Go," she shouted, but Ethan didn't go. He watched, frozen, as the hunter lunged at her. She moved with inhuman speed, rolling to the side just as its claws tore into the dirt where she'd been standing. She shouted something in her own language, and her bracelets flared with bright blue light. For a second, the hunter paused, its red eye flickering. Ethan didn't understand what was happening, but he saw his chance. He scrambled to his feet and grabbed her arm. "Come on." The blue light faded as quickly as it appeared. Lyra looked at him, really looked at him, as if surprised he hadn't left her. Then the hunter roared. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was alive. A deep, horrible sound that made the trees tremble. Without another word, Ethan and Lyra ran again, vanishing into the darkness. Behind them, the hunter's roar turned into a long, metallic howl, and more footsteps joined the chase. Asterisk. Running into the unknown, the forest was alive with sound now. Heavy steps pounding the ground, drones buzzing overhead, branches breaking as the hunters closed in. Ethan had never run so fast in his life. His breath came in ragged gasps. His legs burned, but fear pushed him forward. Lyra was ahead of him, moving like water through the trees, quick and fluid despite the darkness. Every few seconds, she glanced over her shoulder, her glowing eyes scanning for danger. Behind them, the hunter's red beam swept across the trunks, catching the edge of Ethan's vision like a warning. "Left," Lyra shouted. Ethan didn't think, just followed her as they veered sharply off the faint trail and plunged into thicker undergrowth. Branches whipped at his face and tore at his clothes. But he kept moving. The ground began to slope downward, and soon they were half running, half sliding through damp soil and tangled roots. Ethan stumbled more than once, nearly falling. But Lyra caught his arm each time without slowing. Somewhere above them, the drone's whistle changed pitch, sharper, faster. "They are calling more," Lyra said breathlessly. Ethan's heart dropped. More. "There's more of them." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They reached the bottom of the slope and burst into a clearing. Moonlight flooded the space, revealing a stream that wound its way through the forest like silver. Ribbon. Lyra knelt beside it for just a second, scooping water into her hands. "Drink now, no time later." Ethan hesitated, but the dryness in his throat won. He knelt, splashing cool water into his mouth. It was sweet, clean, the best thing he'd tasted in days. Then he heard it. A faint clicking sound. It wasn't behind them. It was above them. Ethan looked up just in time to see a shadow detach from the treetops, another drone. Dropping silently until it hovered only a few feet above their heads. Its red lens locked onto them instantly. "Go!" Lyra shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the stream. They sprinted along the water's edge, the drone following close, its light sweeping over them in short bursts. Every time it got too close, Lyra threw a rock or stick at it, forcing it to back off for a moment. But it always returned. Ethan's mind raced. "We can't outrun them forever." "We not need forever," Lyra replied, her words clipped. Her voice tight. The trees began to thin ahead, and Ethan could see a wall of mist curling over the ground. As they ran into it, the air grew colder, and the forest floor became soft and uneven. "Where are we?" Ethan asked between breaths. "Old ground," Lyra said. "They do not come here." That sounded like good news, but also like bad news. If the hunters avoided this place, there was probably a reason. The mist thickened, and shapes began to loom out of it. Tall black stones, some leaning at odd angles, others broken and half buried in the dirt. Strange markings ran along there, surfaces glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ethan slowed for a moment, staring. What is this place? Lyra didn't stop. Long ago was a gate. Now, only bones. Bones, the word sent a shiver through him. They weaved through the stones, their footsteps muffled by the soft, mossy ground. Behind them, the drone's buzzing grew faint, and the sound of the hunter's steps stopped entirely. Ethan looked back. The red lights were gone. The forest was silent again. "They're not following," he said, relief washing over him. Lyra didn't answer. She kept moving, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Ethan jogged to catch up. "They won't come? Here, then we're safe, right?" She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Safe from them, not safe from all. That made Ethan's stomach twist. They moved deeper into the mist, the stones growing larger and closer together until they formed something like a pathway. The markings on them seemed to shimmer as they passed, though Ethan couldn't tell if it was the moonlight or something else. Finally, they stopped in a small clearing surrounded by the stones. Lyra crouched, examining the ground. "We rest here, just short." Ethan sat down heavily, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You have to tell me what's going on," he said. "What are these hunters? Why are they after you?" Lyra hesitated, as if weighing whether to speak. Then she said, "They are collectors. They take my kind. For war. For..." Her voice trailed off. "For what?" Ethan pressed. Her eyes darkened. "For food." Ethan stared. "Food? You mean yes?" He didn't know what to say. His mind went back to the first thing she'd said to him. "Don't eat me." Now he understood why. Before he could respond, a sound rippled through the mist. It wasn't the mechanical growl of the hunters, nor the high whistle of the drones. This was different. A low, deep hum that seemed to come from the stones themselves. Lyra stood instantly, her head snapping, toward the sound. "We must go," she said sharply. Ethan got to his feet. "Why? You said they don't come here." "They don't," she said. "But something else does." From somewhere deep in the mist, a shadow moved. It was huge, too big to be a hunter, and its shape was wrong, shifting like smoke, but solid at the same time. The hum grew louder. Lyra grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the far side of the clearing. "Run now. Do not stop. Do not look back." Ethan didn't argue. They ran again, the stones whipping past them, the mist swirling around their legs. The hum followed, growing sharper, almost like a voice. Somewhere behind them, the shadow slid. Between the stones, moving faster, Ethan's chest tightened. Whatever this thing was, he wasn't sure if it was better or worse than the hunters. And in that moment, he realized they were no longer running from something. They were running deeper into the unknown. Trust earned in fear, the mist clung to them like wet cloth as Ethan and Lyra kept running, weaving through the ancient stone markers. The humming sound behind them slowly faded, swallowed by the heavy silence of the forest. Only when they reached a thick wall of trees did Lyra slow down, her breathing quick but steady. Ethan, on the other hand, leaned against a trunk, gasping for air. "Please, tell me. We're stopping." Lyra scanned the shadows, then nodded. "Just a little. Not safe too long." They moved to a cluster of fallen logs where the mist didn't seem as heavy. Lyra sat cross-legged on the ground, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. Ethan dropped down beside her, still catching his breath. For a few moments, neither spoke. The forest was too quiet, the kind of quiet that made even whispers feel too loud. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Okay, I've run through the dark, dodged giant metal killers, and been chased by whatever that smoky thing was. I think I deserve some answers." Lyra's gaze flickered toward him. She seemed hesitant, but after a moment, she said, "You help me when you not have to. That is rare." For human, Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Rare? How many humans do you know?" Her lips tightened. "Too many, but not like you." He leaned forward, curiosity pulling him in. "What do you mean?" Lyra looked down at her hands, brushing dirt from the metal bands around her wrists. "My people call your kind takers. Long ago, some humans come to my home. They trade smiles for chains. They take many, say we are gifts, but we are food." Ethan felt his stomach, not food. Yes, in your deep space colonies, not all follow law. Some hunt different meat. The realization hit Ethan hard. No wonder she had been so afraid. No wonder her first words in English had been, "Don't eat me." "I'm not like that," he said firmly. "I would never." "I know," she interrupted softly. "Now I know, but at first. I see your teeth, your knife. I think you same as them." He didn't know whether to feel relieved that she trusted him now, or sick that her experiences had taught her to expect the worst from his kind. Lyra reached into a small pouch, tied to her belt, and pulled out something that looked like a shard of crystal. It glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "This," she said, holding it up, "is why they chase me." Ethan tilted his head. "What is it, Key?" she said simply. "Opens the black ship, controls it. Without it, hunters cannot go far. So if they get this, they win," she finished for him. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "And you've been carrying it this whole time? No wonder they're after you." She gave a small, humorless smile. "I try to throw it away, but it always comes back. That doesn't make sense." She met his eyes, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might explain, but instead she stood up suddenly, her head turning toward the mist again. "We must move." too quiet. Reluctantly, Ethan got to his feet. His legs ached, but he forced himself to keep up as Lyra led them deeper into the forest. They walked for what felt like hours. The moon slowly sliding behind clouds. The mist thinned until the trees opened into a wide valley. Down below, moonlight reflected off something smooth and white, a frozen river. Stretching far into the distance, Ethan blinked. Ice. Here. Not ice, Lyra said. Salt. Long ago, water here was alive. Now dead. The air was colder here, sharp in Ethan's lungs. They descended into the valley, their footsteps crunching on brittle salt crystals. Halfway across, Lyra suddenly stopped. Wait! Ethan froze, scanning the emptiness. What is it? She didn't answer. She knelt and pressed her palm to the ground. The metal band on her wrist flickered with light. Then Ethan heard it. A faint rumble. Far away but getting closer. It's not the hunters, she said quietly. Something else. Before Ethan could ask, the rumble became a deep, thrumming sound. The salt beneath their feet vibrated. Lyra grabbed his arm. Run! They sprinted toward the far side of the valley. The rumble grew into a roar, and cracks began to race across the salt like lightning. Something massive moved beneath the surface, following their path. Faster. Lyra shouted. The cracks widened. And Ethan caught a glimpse of something dark and wet rising beneath them. Like a giant fin slicing through the salt, they dove the last few feet onto solid ground as the surface behind them exploded upward. A massive creature burst through a serpentine body of glistening black plates, its eyes glowing faint green. It roared, the sound vibrating in Ethan's bones. Lyra grabbed his hand and pulled him into the trees. They didn't stop until the roar faded and the forest swallowed the valley from view. When they finally stopped, Ethan bent over, gasping for air. Please tell me that was the last surprise for tonight. Lyra shook her head. Night is young. Ethan groaned. Great. But then something unexpected happened. Lyra smiled. A small, real smile that softened the sharp edges of her face. You keep running with me, she said. Even when you can leave. That means something. Ethan met her eyes. Maybe I just don't like leaving people behind. She tilted her head, studying him. That is rare for anyone. They stood there in silence for a moment, the cold air between them carrying an unspoken understanding. It wasn't trust yet, not fully. But it was the beginning, and somewhere deep in Ethan's mind, he realized that he wasn't just helping her because she needed it. He was helping her because, for the first time in a long time, he wanted to. The truth about her fear the night grew colder as Ethan and Lyra pushed deeper into the forest. The salt valley was far behind them now, but the memory of the massive serpent still lingered in Ethan's mind. Every snapping twig and rustling leaf made him glance over his shoulder. Lyra moved ahead silently, her silver hair catching faint light from the moon that broke through the clouds. Her steps were light, almost soundless, but her shoulders were tense. Ethan could tell she was thinking about something heavy. They finally stopped in a small hollow where a cluster of boulders formed a kind of shelter. Lyra crouched and began arranging small pieces of dry wood. She didn't ask if he wanted a fire. She just built one. Ethan sat on a flat rock, rubbing warmth back into his hands. I need to know something, he said, finally. She didn't look up. What? Thing you said earlier? About humans? About food? Her hands stilled. The silence stretched between them until Ethan wasn't sure she would answer. Then, in a voice quieter than the wind, she said, It is not only your kind. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Lyra sat back on her heels, her glowing eyes fixed on the small pile of wood as she struck a spark with a strange tool from her belt. In the galaxy, there are rules, agreements between worlds. But there are also those who live outside the rules. Pirates, raiders, hunters. They take people, not for trade, not for ransom, for meat. The fire caught, casting a warm glow over her face. It didn't make her look any less alien. Her features were still too precise, too luminous, but it made her look softer, almost fragile. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. And the hunters chasing you. They're those kinds of people. They are worse, she said simply. They are machines made to serve the ones who eat. He swallowed hard, and they ate your people. Her gaze lifted to meet his. They ate my family. The words hit Ethan like a blow. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lyra's voice stayed calm, but there was something in it, a stillness that wasn't peace. But the kind of emptiness that comes after you've cried all you can. I was taken when I was small, too. Young to fight. They put me in a cage on their ship. I could hear the others. I could smell the blood. I thought it was my turn next. Ethan clenched his fists, but you escaped. Her lips twitched, not in a smile, but something closer to bitterness. Not by myself. Someone opened the cage. A human, said made Ethan blink. A human like me. She nodded slowly. He worked for the eaters. But he saw me and he stopped. He told me to run. I never saw him again. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. Ethan finally said, "That's why you looked at me the way you did when we first met. You thought I was like them, but part of you remembered him too." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Maybe, or maybe I am just tired of running and trusting no one. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You can trust me. Her eyes softened just a little. Words are easy. Trust is not. The wind shifted, and a faint sound reached Ethan's ears. Not the heavy steps of the hunters, but something else. Lighter, quicker. Almost like whispering voices moving through the trees. Lyra's head snapped toward the sound instantly. She reached for the glowing crystal in her pouch, gripping it tightly. What is it? Ethan asked. They are close again, she said. They always find the key, even without the tracker. Ethan frowned. How? You destroyed that thing. She looked at the crystal in her hand, her expression hardening. Because it is not only a key, it is a beacon. That made his stomach drop. You mean, it's been leading them right to us this whole time? Yes. She slipped the crystal back into her pouch, and I cannot throw it away. It is part of me now. Ethan stared. Part of you. What does that even mean? Her hand hovered over the metal band on her left wrist. They put it inside me. Long ago, it grows with me. I remove it. I die. The truth landed like a weight in the cold night air. The thing she carried, the thing they were chasing, wasn't just some object she'd stolen. It was bound. To her, she could never be free of it. Ethan felt his chest tighten. So what do we do? Just keep running until they finally catch us. Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time since they'd met, there was no fear in her eyes, only determination. No, we go to them. Ethan blinked. Go to them. That's insane. Insane is running forever, she said. Insane is waiting for them to find us when we are weak. If we go now, maybe I can stop them. He shook his head. You'll be walking straight into their hands. She gave a small, almost sad smile. I was born in their hands. I know how they think. If I get close enough, I can end it. Ethan's instincts screamed to say no, but when he looked at her, really looked at her, he realized she wasn't asking for his permission. She was telling him her decision. Still, he said, if you're going, I'm going with you. Her eyes widened slightly. Why? Because you're right, he said, standing. Running forever is insane. And because? He hesitated, then finished. Because I don't leave people behind. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then tomorrow, we walk into the jaws. The whispering in the forest grew louder, and the shadows between the trees seemed to move. Whatever time they had left to prepare wasn't much. A choice that changes everything. Forest was still when the first red light appeared between the trees. Ethan and Lyra stood side by side at the edge of a clearing. The moon hung high above them, bathing the ground in pale light. Far across the open space, the black shapes of the hunters began to emerge, one after another, their single glowing eyes fixed on the two figures who had stopped running. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to hide, to run, but Lyra's words from the night before echoed in his mind. Tomorrow, we walk into the jaws. The lead hunter stepped forward, its towering body blocking the moonlight. The air seemed to vibrate with each of its steps. Behind it, two drones floated into position, their red beams sweeping over the clearing. They know we're not running anymore, Ethan muttered. That is the point, Lyra said calmly, her eyes locked on the lead hunter. They will not. Expect what comes next. She reached into her pouch and pulled out the glowing crystal. It pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat. Ethan noticed her hands were steady, her breathing even. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The lead hunter stopped 10 paces away. Its red eye narrowed to a thin slit, and a deep metallic voice spoke for the first time. Return the key. Unit L7 and termination will be swift. Lyra stepped forward. You will have nothing. In one smooth motion, she lifted the crystal high. The glow intensified, flooding the clearing with blue light. The hunters froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Ethan to notice the flicker in their eyes. What are you doing? He hissed. Ending it, she said. The light from the crystal flared brighter, and the ground beneath them began to hum. The air grew heavy, pressing against Ethan's skin. A low, deep tone filled the clearing, not from the hunters, but from the earth itself. The drones moved first, zipping toward Lyra. Ethan's knife flashed as he swung, slicing through the first one. It fell in a shower of sparks. The second veered away, but kept circling, its beam darting across the ground. The lead hunter raised its claws and charged. Ethan didn't think he threw himself in front of Lyra, the impact sending him crashing into the dirt. The hunter loomed over him, claws raised for the kill. Then the ground beneath it cracked. Blue light erupted upward, wrapping around the hunter's legs like chains of energy. It froze mid-strike, its body twitching. Lyra's voice rang out, steady and strong. You built me to be prey. You forgot prey learns. The crystal's light shot skyward, piercing the clouds. The hum became a roar, and the other hunters began to seize and collapse, their armor splitting apart as if torn from within. Ethan scrambled to his feet. What's happening? I am using the key as it was meant to be used, Lyra said. Her voice strained now, to shut them down. The drones fell from the air, lifeless. The hunters collapsed one by one, their red eyes dimming. But as the last one fell, the crystal in Lyra's hands cracked. She gasped, stumbling. Ethan caught her before she fell. It's okay, he said quickly. It's over. You did it. She shook her head weakly. Not yet. The signal, it calls the ship. Ethan looked up and saw it. A massive shadow moving across the stars, blotting out the moonlight. The black ship descended slowly, its hull covered in sharp angles and shifting plates. Tell me you have a plan for that, Ethan said. Her gaze met his, and he saw the answer before she spoke. I will go to them, alone. No, he said. Instantly. Absolutely not. If I go, I can give them the crystal. They will leave this world. You will be safe. And you? She hesitated. I will not. Ethan felt a surge of anger. You think I've come this far just to watch you walk into their hands? Her expression softened. Ethan, you are not like the others. But this is not your fight. He shook his head. It is now. The black ship was closer, its engines rumbling like distant thunder. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Lyra's hand tightened on the cracked crystal. If you come, you may die. Ethan took a deep breath. Then I'll die on my feet, not hiding in the trees. For the first time since they met, Lyra's eyes glistened, not with fear, but with something else. Gratitude. They turned together to face the ship as it landed, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The ramp lowered, and a blinding red light spilled out. Figures emerged taller than the hunters, their armor darker, their weapons longer. Ethan tightened his grip on his knife. Lyra stood beside him, her cracked crystal pulsing faintly. Ready? He asked. She nodded once. Together. The first figure stepped onto the clearing. Its voice was deep, inhuman, and cold. Return the key. Lyra raised the crystal high. Come and take it. The figures advanced. The ship's engines roared. Ethan's heart pounded. Whatever happened next, it would decide both their fates. And as the shadow of the ship swallowed them, Ethan realized one thing. Humans might be small in this universe, but sometimes small things changed everything.